They tell us that retirement is supposed to be the golden years of our lives. But all too often, we hear folks feeling empty, lost, or even confused after making the leap into the next phase of their life. Today, I'm going to break down some of the causes for these unintended feelings, in addition to the exact framework that we use to work with clients to and through retirement in order to help them accelerate in checking off their bucket list goals. Before I jump in, I want to ask you a very important question. What are some of the items in your mind that you're already letting pass you by while you're waiting for that someday to occur? Picture this. You're in your early 60s. You have a great defined list of things you want to execute on, including learning a new language, traveling to all of the national parks throughout the United States, visiting and spending a month in Costa Rica, and even learning how to cook in Italy. But 3 years into retirement, you take a minute to think about things, and you realize you've accomplished exactly none of them. Not because you couldn't afford it, or even that health issues might have slowed your pace, but because you've fallen into a trap all too common, falling into the gap between dreaming and doing. The Institute for Financial Wellness found that while about 78% of retirees have a bucket list formed, only about 23% of them actually make progress towards doing what they want to do. The rest, they get stuck in what I would call the someday cycle. An endless cycle, which turns into a month of procrastinating, a year of procrastinating, and could eventually turn into never getting anything done at all. So what separates the 23% of folks living out their dreams and the others that don't end up doing what they want? It's not money. I would not say that it's health, but I would say that once you fully understand it, it can empower you and help you reach towards your dreams. It's a lack of structure and building a defined plan surrounded by accountability, which is why I'm going to show you my process today. Think about it. For somewhere between 30 to 40 years, you've built your structure in your life around the workplace and your career. Deadlines created urgency, meetings created accountability, and paychecks created motivation. Your days probably had shape, direction, and purpose. And then all of a sudden retirement hits and silence. No one's out there asking you for updates on your Italy trip. Nobody is asking you on your progress as far as learning a new language. And no one is asking about an update as far as visiting the national parks. And without external motivation and accountability, I've seen even the biggest dreams fall by the wayside. I call the system that we utilize the bridge system, which is a method that bridges the gap between your dreams, your goals, and actually taking action. The B stands for budget, and not just what the costs associated with the trip are, but actually having a detailed outline of how money is going to flow over time. R is realistic phasing, breaking those big picture items into small, more actionable, easy to tackle steps. I is for intentional structure, creating a foundation aside from that 9 to 5 that you've been used to your whole life. D is dynamic flexibility, adapting to change as it occurs. G is goal celebration, the psychology of progress. And E is emotional preparation, handling the transition and the feelings that come with it that all too often are not spoken about. Let me show you exactly how this works. Many times, folks might approach something like this, but they could be doing it backwards. They look at their savings and ask, what can I afford? But this can bring about a mindset of scarcity and planning for limitation, as opposed to expanding your mind for your dreams. So I start by asking, what would make retirement meaningful? If I had 1 year to live, I had all the money in the world, and my health would be perfectly fine, what would I do that I haven't already accomplished? The key that I find here is that once you budget for your dreams, everything else seemingly falls into place. As opposed to figuring out what's left over after budgeting for your dreams, where again, things can go by the wayside quite easily. With that said, I think money here is probably only about half the battle. The other half is something that I would argue could be even more stressful, and that's why it's important to touch on. For decades, you might have had conversations where people would ask, what do you do for a living? And you always had an answer, whether it was an educator, a nurse, a lawyer, or a doctor. You had something to say which was more than just your paycheck. It was your identity. Then one day retirement hits and that identity is gone. And although you might have all of the money and health in the world, you feel lost and empty inside. We approach addressing this with what I would call identity anchoring. First is values excavation. What values of your identity through the workplace do you want to carry on with you through retirement? Next is purpose projection. Identifying and figuring out your why and how that aligns with your goals and values. Last is story building. You're not just retiring from something, you're retiring to a new phase. An example of the emotional timeline might go something like this. Months 1 through 3 is the honeymoon phase. Your newfound freedom and flexibility feels amazing. You're doing some of the small things that you want to get done, and everything tends to feel great. Months 4 through 8 is the reality phase. That's where the reality starts to kick in, and you might ask yourself, now what? Months 9 through 12 tends to be a pretty important inflection point, where some people might start to feel less than desirable feelings and could eventually develop things like depression, anxiety, and the feeling of being lost, while others are able to power through and break through to the next chapter in life. Understanding this, we like to prepare for months 9 through 12 before we even start month 1. And even at this point, where retirees might find that they have a clear vision as far as their financial and emotional well-being, they might end up making plans, spend hours of research, writing things down, and never taking the next step. Important to note, there are psychological reasons as to why this could happen, and understanding them could better empower you to move forward with your dreams as opposed to continuing to procrastinate. I've personally felt this phenomenon multiple times, where the closer I get to achieving a goal, the more motivation I have to push through the finish line. And on the other hand, the further I am away from a goal, the more roadblocks I put in place in my own head, and it makes it a little bit harder to get started. This is where I start to take smaller steps, or micro progressions. Take planning that trip of a lifetime, for instance. I'll take this big goal and break it down into smaller, more achievable pieces. In week 1, take the time to research travel companies and what's available to you as well as their pricing structure. In week 2, join a travel group so I can hear real-life experiences from folks and what they enjoyed and what they didn't. In week 3, acquire any other clothing or necessities that I need from my experience. And in week 4, I make the commitment to book the trip. Rather than trying to tackle the entire task at once, I break the goal down to smaller, more manageable pieces, which allow me to feel that confidence as I go through each goal step by step. Another caveat that I have found is that having strict, regimented bucket lists over time can actually add pressure to the situation and cause for breakdown. In understanding that life can throw curveballs, taking a flexible approach allows me to brush some of the pressure off my shoulders and feel better about progressing towards my goals. Maybe I hit a roadblock, and my major goal in that big trip gets postponed. But that's not a problem, because now I made a mindset shift where I have more time to learn, more time to save money, and more time to gain more experience for the big trip. I find that when I plan for adaptation, obstacles can become plot twists in my big story, as opposed to treacherous traps shutting my story down. The next piece of the puzzle gets me very excited, as I've seen it have a compounding effect over time. When I first started to create bucket lists for myself, or in helping others work through theirs, I quickly realized that what we are creating is just a list. Simply put, they could result in disconnected experiences that don't align with each other. So I started to connect the dots to further enhance the fulfillment around these dreams and goals and make them a more connected purpose. But the most fulfilling retirement dreams can create a compound effect. Each one builds on the next, making them more and more meaningful as you progress through. Your travels could end up progressing into artwork, and your artwork could end up progressing into novels. Novels could result in volunteer work, in reading to hospital patients, which could further expand your network in resulting in additional friends to travel with. This is just one small example of how a big picture could interconnect with another to create more meaningful experiences for you and create a web of compounding positivity. By achieving your dreams, expanding your network, and increasing and learning new skill sets, you further enhance your retirement and the meaning of what it is for you. And instead of just checking off boxes on a list, you can work towards creating a retirement and a life built on passion and purpose. I've witnessed this situation and turnaround in multiple instances, where maybe initially the days in retirement felt optional, but in having a sense of purpose and pride, you look forward to the next day and tackling the next goal. So here are the exact steps that I've been implementing for myself in this order. First things first, I write down everything I've ever wanted to do, no matter how big, how small, or what the cost. Sometimes, these goals or dreams might seem like they're too big, or I'm too late. Next, I research in detail the actual costs surrounding the top 5 items on my list. Then, I use the regret test to fully understand which dreams and goals are non-negotiable and I need to find a way to make them work no matter what. After this, I narrowed down the list further by identifying which dreams and goals energize me just simply by thinking about them. Important to note, I do prefer to use a tracking system, which could be something like a notebook, an app, or a web program. Also important to note, I've found that having an accountability partner, in this case with my life goals, my spouse, can add meaning in a major way that I never thought possible. And lastly, I systematically review that list on a quarterly basis to realize and understand what I have accomplished and what I have not. By treating these goals similarly to how I treat my work life, I've found a ton of happiness and fulfillment and understanding that executing my dreams is a possibility. And as I do check those items off the list, I gradually add more. Although taking it easy can seem appealing to some, especially having worked for decades of your life, the system that I outlined prior could end up resulting in feelings that we need as humans to explore on a daily basis. The need for purpose, for growth, and the challenge to thrive. I've watched as those I greatly care about take a path less defined and structured, and in some cases, end up falling into irrelevancy. So here's my last question for you. What type of retiree do you want to be? I look at things through the lens of every day that I am not building is momentum that I'm probably not gaining. Every week I postpone is a week of compounded growth that I'm missing out on. And every month that I wait is a month of time that I'm not going to get back. If you're planning for retirement at this moment in time and you're currently in your accumulation phase, take a minute to check out our next video here.